Hello everybody, it is Dan, and today I'm going to be doing a video on my top 5 favorite series. So, if you're interested in what I'm going to talk about today, please be sure to leave a like down below and tell me what your 5 favorite series are. Not an incredibly favorite series of all time. I don't know that many people who actually love this series a ton, but me personally, I absolutely loved it. This is one of the few series that have actually made me cry. So, this guy, we've got The Maze Runner. This is a really solid series with 5 books currently. Air has unfortunately lost one of those, and the 5th one is up there in hardcover because I got it as it came out. But this series is more or less just about a guy gets locked in a maze with a bunch of other people, no memories, no idea what's going on, need to escape it, and then there's a giant plot line after that completely leaves the maze, and it's just incredible how it folds out, how it's like it's an apocalyptic story, and I just love the scope of the story. The characters were incredible. I loved the moments that just made me cry, that made me so sad. It's just a very heart-wrenching series for me. I picked up the books way back, probably in 2014 or so, and so that meant that I was roughly in middle school or something like that. I don't remember, but I remember reading it, and I remember loving the first book. Second book was really solid. Third book was really solid as well. Fourth book, heart-wrenching. 5th book made me cry. I remember I was sitting at... Alright, fine, I brought it down for you guys. 5th book, The Fever Code. I remember reading this book as it came out. I went out to Costco, bought this, not realizing that it did come out, and so I just got it, and I just started reading it right away. And I read it right after Costco, and we were like, for the next couple of days, I just kept reading it, and then finally, I remember we were out doing shopping in a supermarket, and I was just finishing up this book while we were pushing the carts, and I just finished the last few pages, and I put it down, and I just cried. For the next couple of hours, I was completely unresponsive, not able to function whatsoever because of the incredibly sad ending of Fever Code. It just hurt my heart. The ending itself is not sad whatsoever, but really, it's just how that ending goes on to affect the series. That's just like, no. But Maze Runner is one of my all-time favorite series. I absolutely recommend it to anyone who wants to read this. Let me bring in Air, actually. Air has also read the series. Let me bring her in. I don't actually have a seat, so you can just walk in. Alright, Air, come on, come here. Come on. Try to squeeze in. I don't have a chair for you, sorry. Hi, Air.
Hi.
Okay, tell me what you think about The Maze Runner, which is my 5th favorite series of all time. So what do you think?
I really like Maze Runner, but one of the books that I was reading, I lost.
She lost the 4th book. I think it was the 4th or 3rd book.
I think it was the 4th.
And she lost it, and I'm so sad about that because she didn't get to the ending. She didn't even get to the cool, funny ending. Funny. She didn't get to the cool, sad, incredibly heart-wrenching ending, and I'm so sad about that because she needs to experience this. You can't experience that and then do this like a year later. We need to get the last book. I read this like a year later, but she needs to read it quickly so that she remembers what goes down.
Yeah, but it was a really good book up till then.
Yeah, I know it was a really good book until then. You're really short.
I'm like kneeling.
My 4th favorite series of all time is gonna be Narnia by C.S. Lewis. Right here I've got 6 of the 7 books, and you can see that they're all in order except for the first one, which Air lost again. Thanks, Air.
I lost? Oh yeah.
Thanks, Air. You're so mean.
I read the 2nd book. I'm going on to the 3rd book.
She's read the 2nd book. I've read the entire thing, and I loved this series. It was so magical and wonderful, but I read this like late in my life. I remember reading this in like 2016, so it was pretty late in my life, and I wasn't a kid anymore, so I was like still not exactly like of the age that it was supposed to be read by, but I still loved it a lot because it was just so wonderful. I read it in the publication order, which is not the correct order technically, but I didn't care. Air, what do you think of the series?
I love Narnia. It was a great book. The 2nd book, I got halfway through the 1st book, and it was
amazing. Got bored, of course.
No, I didn't.
The 1st book isn't that great. Isn't as good as the 2nd book. 2nd book is one of the best. Yeah,
Book
it was solid. It's a really good book. I love it. It's my 4th favorite series of all time. Calm down, don't shake the bed. My 3rd favorite book of all time is gonna be not this Harry Potter book, but like the series Harry Potter, because I don't actually own it. I just borrowed it from a friend, so that's unfortunate. But I really loved Harry Potter, even though I talk a lot about Harry Potter not being the best series of all time, and instead of it actually being one of the most sold books of all time. It's incredibly good, and it deserves all the praise that it gets. it's just not my favorite book of all time. I enjoyed Harry Potter. It was an incredibly strong book with one of the best series I've read of all time, and so I'm kind of sad, you know, that I don't own it, but it's still an incredible book, and I'm trying to get Air to read it. So somebody
I haven't read it yet.
tell Air to read it.
I haven't read Harry Potter, but I think it's gonna be a really good book.
A book, yeah, all 7 books. It's it's really long. It's like 1.6 million words. It's insane. It's so long, but it's so worth it as well. I really loved Harry Potter. It took me like, I read it like a couple of years ago, only 2 years ago from now, which is 2018. So I read it in 2016, and I absolutely loved it. It was great. And then right before that, I remember reading a different book, which I'm going to talk about soon. My second favorite series of all time is going to be the Percy Jackson series. And I'm not just counting this series, I'm counting the entire, like, 18 book series. It's really, really long. It's right here. This is the entire shelf, and this is like half of the shelf. So it's really, really long, and it's one of my favorite series of all time. Now, the reason being, I grew up with this series. I know a lot of people, like 20, 25 years old, stuff like that, they grew up with Harry Potter, and that's why they love Harry Potter. Me, I grew up as these books came out. Not these ones, but the Heroes of Olympus. I grew up while these books came out, and so I was waiting. I remember I waited like every single year, waiting for the next book to come out so I could learn what happened in the series next. And this was what I grew up with. This was such an incredible series. Personally, I love the Heroes of Olympus a lot more than I love the original Percy Jackson series, but you know, they're all combined in my head, and I just love all of them so much. Air, what do you think of it?
I love the Percy Jackson series. Favorite series of all time.
For her, not for me. Get out of here.
For me. And yeah, it was just great. I wasn't born with it, and I wasn't like growing up with it. But when N got me to read those books, I read it like so fast, and I loved it because I didn't have to wait. I just read all of them in one go.
Yeah, she got lucky. But the thing about this for Air is that that was the first introduction to reading for her. I told her that I really wanted her to read some books, and so, but she didn't read any books because she didn't know how to read because she's not smart.
I did know.
But but she didn't read any books at all. So I told her, I want you to read the Percy Jackson series, just the 5 original books, really, really tiny books, and I want you to read them by the end of the year. At the beginning of the year, I told her, and she promised me that she would, and then she ended up reading them, and she ended up loving them. She ended up loving them.
I read them in 2 months.
She read the entire series within the year, and that's why she reads now. Percy Jackson is her introduction to reading. Yeah. It's the same thing with me. It was my introduction to reading real chapter books, and so that's why I love it so much. Even though it may not be the most original thing of all time, it was incredibly important to me. Next, we've got my number 1 favorite series of all time, which is right here, Lord of the Rings. The best series of all time. Undisputable. I'm sorry if you say anything else, you're wrong. You could say Harry Potter is the best of all time. Disagree. Percy Jackson? Disagree. You can't change my mind on this. Lord of the Rings is the father of fantasy. This is the greatest fantasy series, favorite book series of all time, okay? Let me tell you about this book first of all, okay? I remember I bought these books back in a couple of years ago, so that would be 2014, okay? So I bought it way back when. And I remember reading through it, and I remember reading this book, not this exact book, because this is like in prime condition. But I read The Hobbit, and it took me like 2 months to read this tiny 300-page book. And the reason being, it's a very dense book. I don't know what it's talking about, and I get confused a lot with this. But finally, I finished it, and I just thought this was a solid book, actually. Even though I didn't enjoy it a lot, I thought this was an incredible book. And so I put it to the side, and then I picked up the legendary Lord of the Rings series right here. And these 3 books absolutely destroyed my life. I took 6 months, maybe a year, maybe more. I don't remember because I have no sense of time while I read this. It took me absolutely forever to read the books. You can see how much I've destroyed them. I only read them once. And this is how much I've destroyed the book from the one reading. And so you can see how long it took me. But when I finally finished, I thought, you know, that was a really difficult book. But after the next couple of days, I slowly realized how incredible the series was, and it finally sunk in how amazing The Lord of the Rings is. And so I went out and I picked out the next couple of Lord of the Rings books, which is, I picked up The Silmarillion and Unfinished Tales. So this is a storybook, really, really dense one actually. It's about 400, 500 pages, but the thing about this is that the text is so incredibly small that this took me like a couple weeks to read, and this is when I was obsessed with Lord of the Rings. And this is my favorite book from Lord of the Rings, hands down. It's incredible. But normal people shouldn't read this. If you don't like it, don't read this. No way. And then there's Unfinished Tales, which is just a bunch of short stories from it. And this I didn't read completely, but I read them every once in a while. And then there's the final 2 books from Lord of the Rings, which is Children of Hurin, which I don't have, but I've read, and then Baron and Luthien, which I haven't read yet, and then the newest one, which is The Fall of Something. I don't remember what it is, but it's a really cool series. Air, I'm trying to get Air to read it, but she really does not want to.
Yeah, The Hobbit, I started reading it a bit, and it bored me so much.
Okay, because she doesn't understand it. It's at the beginning of The Hobbit. She's read like 30 pages and then she quit. So
Yeah.
you can't love a book at 30 pages, okay? Sorry, I hated the Percy Jackson series at 30 pages.
I love Percy Jackson series at 30 pages.
I hated the Percy Jackson series at 30 pages.
I loved it.
But hands down, nobody can dispute me. Lord of the Rings is my favorite series of all time, okay? For me, that's personally, and I would even put it up as a contender as one of the greatest series of all time. This book is like the entire series is close to 50 or something years old, like 70 maybe. So it's insanely old, and it's still holding up as one of the greatest series of all time. And that's just incredible to me. The original Lord of the Rings generation is like 70 now, but I'm not exactly Lord of the Rings generation. But I still love it. It's one of the greatest. It's inspired every single fantasy that we know. It's like every single author is trying to recreate what Tolkien did in the Lord of the Rings. But Silmarillion was great. Air, anything to say?
No, because I haven't read the book.
You should read it. Tell Air down below that she needs to read Lord of the Rings, because you just tell her it's such a good book. She does not believe me. It's so good.
Yeah, I might read it. I might.
You better read it. That is all the list that I've got for you today. If you enjoyed this list, let me know down below, and make sure to like this video and subscribe to see any other lists, to see any book reviews that I post every single Sunday. Let me know what you thought of the review and of my list. Tell me your list. I want to know all that kind of stuff. And subscribe for the next video. I will see you guys in the next video. See ya!
Bye.